Testimony Thursday, Jack for Jesus. This week, I'm so excited to bring you Ross Mackay. He has an incredible story of redemption, and I just can't wait for you to see what God has done in his life.
Great. So I'm Ross Mackay. I'm super grateful to have the opportunity to share my testimony here, Jack for Jesus. It means a lot to me and my ministry. So before I met Christ, just a little bit about my testimony is a story of redemption and loss and destruction and almost death. In my early years, I grew up on Vancouver Island. I was adopted at birth. And that led to a lot of lies in my life, an identity crisis. Growing up adopted just means I had, a fear of rejection and a fear of abandonment. And the house I grew up in was super dysfunctional. And there was a lot of violence, a lot of things going on there that I couldn't control. And it made me lash out either in anger or to want to fill a void that was unattainable. I always felt different. I always felt like I had a void in my life, and I couldn't fill it with anything. I left home at the age of 13. Things just got so bad in my life, and I felt, to be popular and to seek that kind of acceptance and the fear of abandonment and stuff like that had got control of me. So I left home. I joined a gang. I joined the older crowd and sought after perfection and popularity. And just hearing the lies in my head, I sought after relationships with women and seeking money, and nothing could ever fill that void. Led me to a spot in my life at a young age that was controlled by other people, and just hearing all these lies in my head, I wanted to seek after the faster life and in the gang, and started gaining money by selling drugs and getting myself into trouble. Shootings to seeing murders and decapitations, things like that in my life. I don't wish upon anybody. High school was tough. I really sought after sports just to get myself out of myself. And it was kind of like a sense of family that I could break away from things for a little while. At the age of 16, I was in my first drug rehab. I had gone through a bad breakup, and the girl had left me at 16 years old, and I didn't know how to cope with that. And I heard all the abandonment and lies in my head, and I remember just putting myself into a bedroom and then seeking after drugs harder and harder. Was heroin, cocaine, everything that I was selling and the gang was selling. And so I was facing some charges and gang racketeering, some pretty serious stuff. And so 16 years old, I was in Vancouver, right in the city, in the heart of it, and in treatment. And that brought me to some questions in my life that I saw that were kind of like a crossroads in my life. And I started seeking other things, and I knew that my life had purpose. It brought me to some of the answers in my identity. I ended up going back to school, doing very well, getting support from the rehab, and eventually playing basketball for University of Victoria, really seeking after my own lifestyle away from the gang, but I still had those ties. And that gang lifestyle was about honor and loyalty and respect. And in that, I thought I owed it to them to go back. There was a lot of stuff happening in Vancouver. Drug prices were through the roof. And, when you're in the United Nations, it's such a big environment, and there's so much going on. It was kind of like a family lifestyle that had brought me some structure in my life. So I thought I owed it to them, and got caught up in gang wars. And, at one point I saw my best friend. I walked into the bathroom, and he had taken his life through fentanyl overdose. And that changed my life drastically. I started seeking answers. I didn't want to die, and I didn't want my family to die. I didn't want to have those ties on my back. And things were so violent out west. I ended up getting my adoption file and really pushing into my heritage. And it ended up bringing me out to St. John, New Brunswick. And I met my mom, my biological mom and sister. Found them on Facebook in the middle of the night. I just kind of had this idea. I don't know if it was a prayer, but I know it was God working in my life at that time. because I'd never really used Facebook before, and I just typed her name in off the file, and boom, in a matter of hours, she was messaging me, and she loved me, and she had some hope for me. So I sought the geographical cure and moved my whole life out to St. John, New Brunswick. And I thought I was cured. I thought I had it all in the bag. I quickly got married and had a child, and decided I wanted to be a father. So I started working out west in oil rigs, still seeking money and fame and fortune and things to fill this up. And it just wasn't good enough for me. I was out there, and quickly the relationship crumbled. And I think it was 2014. I just had enough. I was divorced after a year and a half. I had a child that I wasn't seeing, and I was still out west making tons of money, but at the same time, I wasn't happy at all. I sought to rekindle stuff in the gang and sought after money that way too. And you couldn't bring in enough money to make me happy. It didn't matter what I had, boats, cars, houses, it was never enough. And so I sold a few vehicles of mine and decided I was going to take my life. And that was it. 3 days later, after shooting up heroin, and I woke up in my own vomit and just out of it in my own feces. And I remember crying out to God and just saying, like, God, what is this? Like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I can't live anymore. I'll give all this to you because I don't know why I'm still alive. And there was a peace and a warmth on my heart I can never explain. And just a voice that I heard in my head that said Village of Hope. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know really what Village of Hope was, but it must have been like an idea that I had down before that, or I believe it was an angel or God just putting that in my heart. And I quickly sold everything that I had. I had enough for a one-way ticket and a huge layover. So it took me 2 days, 14-hour layover in Toronto, and I ended up at the Village of Hope at 3 a.m. And getting there was, all God, because I couldn't have done it myself. I was drained. I was up for days on a huge bender, tried to take my life, and God had just brought me through. And I ended up taking this cab. I had no money. Middle of the night, this cab driver heard my story, brought me to the Village of Hope. And I knocked on their door, and they didn't know who I was, but they had been praying, and they said, like, it is God that brought you here. So I honored God, and that was the start of my life. That was my start of my Christian walk. Was 2014. I remember Village of Hope was like the Marines to me. We decided to get baptized and to give our lives to Christ. I worked on myself through inner healing, through all the bondage. Discipleship, and I learned so much about God and what his promises were in my life, and that you could walk through anything with Jesus. And Jesus was there in all those rooms of hurt and abandonment and loneliness, and it really touched my heart in a lot of ways and changed my whole entire life and how I thought. I believe I became a better father there, and I started concentrating more on my family, and gaining friendships and seeing the ministry for what it was. When I look back today and seeing the buildings that we built and the dorms and the roads and everything like that, I knew God had a plan in it, because it still gives me hope today that that other people are using these things, and I see the growth in the kingdom. And that was the change in my heart, was that I got to see my kids again. It definitely helped me, that program. And so I started living my life for Christ, and it's been quite a journey. I started mentoring up in Moncton and seeing my kids again. Things were good. I built a business in painting, and I thought everything was okay. I was pretty heavy into my business and complacent a bit in my life, and that's where the relapse came in. My mom, she tragically passed away 4 years ago in a house fire in Rosse. And I still remember coming down for Easter to see her. It was over Easter break, and the police being at the hotel and them telling me that she passed away tragically, and just how she died. And I was able to stay clean and sober for a couple months, but get through the funeral and everything like that. But my grasp on God had changed. Had all these questions in my life about, why would God do this to the person I love the most, and why does she die so tragically, and how can He do this? And I couldn't face it. I had isolated myself, become complacent, and if you're in recovery, that's not a good spot to be at. You stray away from people, and it gives room for the devil to come in and just to hear lies of the enemy, and end up falling off and going the complete opposite direction for a couple years. And I just remember being in the end of it, alone, scared, and not knowing who I was. And again, I was living in a penthouse in Dieppe, with a $250,000 in my bank, and nothing was never enough. Had this business, but I couldn't help myself. But I was just so depressed. I was in this cycle of bondage of selling drugs and going back in a cycle, and it had a hold of me, and I couldn't get out of it. It was all about the money and the looks and everything like that. I couldn't live with myself anymore. If you know God and you know how good He is, and then you fall off, it just eats you alive. It eats you alive. And I started to cut my wrists, and I wanted to commit suicide. My mental health wasn't that good. And I remember just bleeding out in the bathroom and falling to the ground again and crying out to Jesus, and just asking Him for help, and just asking where He was. And right then it was like that light again, but it was different. It was like an eagle soaring over my life is what I could see. And it was God. And he was bringing me through my entire life, and just the abandonment and the running from families and the running from the gang and the grief that I had and all the strife that I had and all the bitterness had been rooted up. And in the end of that, there was my mom, and just that bitterness and abandonment issues from being adopted all came together. And I knew my mom was at peace, and I knew I was at peace. And I knew that God had a greater purpose in every little thing. And to me, it made sense. It was like, my mom was free and everything, but in that too, I was free. And I could actually do this and be happy and live a life. And He reached out to me and touched my heart in a way that I can't describe. But in that, I think the biggest thing I learned was to always fear God, and losing that relationship with God. It's so, like, that relationship is so important. And Jesus died on the cross for us. And seeing it for what it really was, that He gave up His life for me, it completely changed my dynamic and how I thought. Today, I sit here, I'm at work, I'm at Outflow. I work with the homeless on a daily basis. I get to be a servant. But in that too, I finished the MAP program through King's Church. Over a year and a half it took me, and such an amazing program, changed my life. And and in that, learning about my sanctification and how much salvation means to me, it's gotten me to where I am today. And the people that I've met has drastically changed my life. The mentors that I have, it can only be from God. I sit here today, and I think, like, if you're a Christian, like the biggest thing I learned to do is to wake up and be consistent in, the Word and prayer and worship. And I do that on a daily basis, and creates consistency. And that really adds to my sanctification and cleans my heart on a daily basis, which, that working in ministry and being on the front lines has been such a blessing for me. The things we see here and the things that happen here, it's on a daily basis. You never know what you're going to get into. But, God's met me here, and He gives me the strength to get through it. And I'm super grateful to be where I'm at today, being a father and having a young family, and just being blessed and clean and sober. I couldn't wish it, and no amount of money could take that away from me. Truly am blessed. I'm healthy, and I get to meet new people every single day and minister to them and show the light of Jesus. And that to me has been the greatest thing in my life, because, I could, like I said before, I could never fill that void with anything. And today it's honestly filled. And thank you for having me on here. Thanks for reaching out.